Lehigh Career and Technical Institute in Allentown, well, outside of Allentown, and we'll give you some more information about that a little later on.
As we're going through too, I'm not sure, what the mix is at this point. We'll get to that, but just so you know as well, as we go through, we're going to make sure we are a CTC school, but you're also dealing with 3 transplants, is it what we call them?
Converts.
Converts. So you're dealing with 3 people who come from a traditional K-12 background and have come into this world, so we speak both languages. So we are going to be bringing this back as well to a traditional K-12 school district environment. So you'll see examples of how to take what we're doing and apply it in your situation as well.
All right, I'm Kelly Cahoon. I'm the instructional coach at Lehigh Career and Technical Institute. I've been there for 2.5 years. Before that, I was a 7th grade English teacher at Upper Perkiomen Middle School for 10 years. My first part of my teaching career, and since then I'm a CTE convert, as she said.
My name is Jeff Dahl. I'm the service occupation cluster indoor-outdoor maintenance teacher. Previously, I taught at a traditional school, social studies, for 3 years. So I did not submit a picture, so they put up my idol.
I even asked. I was like, I can take a picture right now. You wouldn't do it. So this is what you get. I'm Stacy Kutz. I am an instructional tech specialist at LCTI. Prior to that, I have 12, 13 years teaching experience, teaching everything from preschool up to 99, I say, because I literally had to teach a student who was 99 years old. So I've run the gamut. But again, CTE, traditional, we're going to kind of bridge that gap a little bit for you.
But those are our Twitter handles. We'd love to connect with you on Twitter. LCTI also has a Twitter as well, so feel free to follow us.
Okay, a little background. I've been at LCTI for a little over 20 years. Just some bullet points. We are the largest career and technical school in Pennsylvania. We do have 45 plus programs, 2,700 students from 10 plus Lehigh County schools. We do have some private schools mixed in there. 47-acre campus. We are on the same campus with L-Tri-C, and we do offer several programs. So we do have an adult ed program. We offer an all-day academic center, so students, instead of being transported up for just a half a day, they can get their academics at our school. We also have a career academy program, which is for credit recovery or for at-risk students, so they are there all day also. And then for me, I teach the service occupation cluster. So we are a closed special needs classroom. They have to be, they are tested out before they come in to make sure that their skills are in line with what they can do within our labs. We have 5 different areas. So I teach indoor-outdoor maintenance. We have a distribution center curriculum. We have a foods, hospitality, and building trades maintenance. So within our program, we can have up to, I just figured this out, 150 students maximum from all the sending districts. And we do have articulation agreements with L-Tri-C, with Penn State for our other programs such as the nursing program, foods, and they offer some other credit programs that any of our students can participate in.
So this is a video just a little bit more that kind of goes, just so you see where we're coming from.
We're the career technology. We're the ones that provide the students the training, the background, and the knowledge that they need to go out there and be successful.
High skill, high wage, high demand occupations. And our high school students are working on equipment that is very much like what they're going to be using in industry. It replicates all the skills and all of the tasks that they need to know when they get to that level.
Our goal is to have the best, the most modern, the most up-to-date equipment, again, to prepare our kids to go out there for jobs and post-secondary. The local districts have nothing close to what we have here.
So companies, knowing that they have to build a solid pipeline, are coming in when the students are in 10th grade and they're watching to see which students they're going to want to come into their companies to work. So by their junior year, students are being recruited to come into summer internship programs and then for co-op in their senior year. And that usually leads into either full employment. Some students choose to go on to college. Some students go right to work and utilize the company's tuition reimbursement programs.
Every program within our facility has some type of certification that when they walk out the door and they get an employer, they can say, okay, here's my certification, here's what I earned at LCTI. Business and industry comes in and they're an integral facet of a lot of the programs in preparing them for jobs, interviewing, resume writing, job keeping skills, how to dress for an interview, what to say for an interview. So the employers know that the students are ready to go out and join the workforce.
Our kids are really getting the best of the best to be able to be prepared to run into the workforce.
So nobody kind of does it better than showing what our students actually do. I mean, our students come in and are running full-on caterings. They're running $500,000 pieces of equipment in our heavy equipment lab. It's not just about sending students to go directly into the career force. Our students can go out into the career force. They can go out to college. They're really multifaceted in the options that they have. And in fact, a lot of our students actually get into a co-op position, get into a placement with a full-time position, and actually go to college while they're working at some place like Braun, and that really gives them a competitive advantage. So being that we have students on kind of both ends of the spectrum, some students that are going to go directly into the work field, some students who are going to go on to college, we really have to prepare our curriculum and everything to give them the competitive advantage to have as many options as possible. The last time that we were here, last year, we presented a poster sessions on Teach STEM like a CTE teacher. So really this STEM and PBL and everything that's being kind of pushed and done in traditional education schools has been going on for years in career and technical education. So when you came in, I kind of gave you something that we presented last year, because the reason that we brought this session here today for you is that one of the biggest questions that we got was about competency-based education. So we have a POS skills-based programs that are put out a set of standards by PDE, but they're all skills-based. And we also have a digital badge initiative that had garnered a lot of attention. So we wanted to bring this to you to kind of show what our digital badge initiative is and how we're rolling it out kind of large scale to give our students competitive advantage when they go out into the workforce.
Okay, so one thing when I started in CTC, you sit in rooms and you hear acronyms. Education is great for acronyms. CTC is no different. But the acronyms are a little different. So as we were kind of going through this, we were taking notes of things that we were throwing out, that if you come from a non-CTC background, you might go, what are they talking about? How many of you, is anybody in here from a CTC school at all? Woohoo! All right, we got one. Woo! Okay, so he's looking at these going, yeah, I know those. But when we say NOCTI, so a NOCTI is a test that is very similar to your PSSA's Keystones. It's a standardized test. Students take it. There is typically a hands-on product component. They're doing something in their field. There's also a written component. CT versus VOTEC. This is something we're very passionate about. When I went to school, it was the VOTEC. Kids went to a VOTEC. So as it's kind of defined and as the schools are kind of pulling that apart, VOTEC is really about, I can do this. And somebody at our institution often uses this example. If I hit the blue widget and then I hit the red widget, I get a purple widget. And as long as I remember to do that, it will always do that. We know that technology is changing so rapidly that by the time I've taught them that as a ninth grader and they graduate, the widgets are new colors and there's something different and there's no more widgets now because it's scanning my eyes instead of looking at widgets. And so it's really about teaching them skills, teaching them to go beyond just I can do this, but thinking about the processes behind what they're doing. Task list, POS, tech prep, we might be using these kind of interchangeably, but if you think of like your standards that your teachers are pulling from PDE, CTE also has standards. These are kind of their standards. They might look very different, and we have an example of his in here in a little bit. They're going to look a little different, but they still are standards that you have this student for 2 years, you're expected to cover this, and like our pre-engineering task list is ridiculous, the amount of things that are in there. But it covers the skills they should know, the knowledge they should have, the vocabulary they should have, but the tasks they can do. So if you hear us talk about those, that's what it refers to. In career and tech ed, a completer is someone who's gone through that task list. They've mastered those concepts. Just like you'd have a student who's checked all the boxes to be eligible for graduation at your school. They've gotten however many math credits they needed and English credits they need. We talked in the video, you heard her talk about how our programs, students go out with a certification. So that is something we try to make sure students go out. We're going to talk a little bit about why that doesn't always happen, but the goal is that our students are walking out with certifications that they can go to an employer or a college and have something specific to show for it that's industry recognized. The state doesn't recognize every industry credential that's out there, however. So there are some that we have recognized. There are also some that we can provide, like Penn State or PennDOT flagger, for example. There's a prescribed way to get that. We can do that in-house, but the state is not going to recognize that at their level. That doesn't mean it's not valid, it's just they're not recognizing it as a PDE type of thing. PDP is something we talk about employability in PDP. You're working on career and readiness standards, that's what it is. That's us trying to get them all those other skills beyond the tasks. And then OAC we're going to talk about as well, but an OAC is a requirement for C2C programs. So this is a committee made up of people in your field that you have collected typically in your region as well. So you've brought them in. So you're truly required by the state to have those industry connections. It's not just like, hey, this is a good idea. You have to. You bring them in, and in order to adjust your curriculum, in order to order materials, you must get their approval. So if you say, hey, I want to change to this new textbook, you will take it to them, they will vet it, and just say, like, this isn't appropriate for the industry at this point. But the opposite is true. Sometimes those OACs will come in and say, listen, this is what we're seeing in graduates. We need them to do this, and they're not doing this. We need you to figure this, like, how can we make this work? So then the teachers are trying to modify their curriculum to meet exactly what the industry is saying we need. We need students who can do this better, and they're not coming out strong enough in this industry to do this. So those are some of the give and take. So you probably have a curriculum committee, probably board level committee at your school that does very similar things when you're vetting your textbooks and things like that. So just some terms as we're going, you understand.
Your crash course in CTP there.
Yes, that's it. Because there was a lot of meetings at the beginning, I was really confused, making notes, like Google this later. So we have one CTC. So as for everybody else, how many people in here are teachers? Of anything, I'll take it. Okay, administrators, tech specialists, or tech coaches. Okay, anybody fall in an other category? Or even other, okay. What do you do?
I'm with the company, and we're trying to build portfolios probably similar to...
So why digital badges? So as we said, we want our students to leave with a certification. So that's the end game, obviously. We want them to walk out and have something to show for that. Unfortunately, that's not always realistic, and we'll talk about why that might not be the case, but there's not always an industry cert we can give someone for a task. It doesn't mean they haven't learned anything. There's kind of this other end of the spectrum, kind of the, what I've seen a lot of times when I go to digital badge presentations, where they're referring to digital badges almost more in a classroom management standpoint, where the student has turned in their work on time, or you're a really good, communicator, and here's a badge. So when we talk about digital badges, what we are trying to do is we're bridging that gap. So as an instructor, you're teaching all the time, you're doing amazing things. We have teachers doing amazing things, we have students doing amazing things. These don't necessarily qualify for an industry certification, but they absolutely need to get credit for it, for everybody's sake, for the student's sake, as a competitive advantage. So I can go out and say, I can pour concrete countertops. That is nowhere in my task list. That is not something that's officially recognized, but I can do this. So if I go to get a job, that gives me that leg up, that competitive advantage. If I'm going to apply for a college and I'm able to have this badge. So the badge is really filling that middle piece, but think of how that helps the teacher too. All the things you teach that at the end of the day you're like, well, it's not a test though. There's no standardized test testing this. This also helps the teachers really get credit for all the amazing things that they're doing in the classroom. So our why digital badges is really to give everybody credit for what they're doing, give them that competitive advantage. So when they're walking out into industry, when they're applying for a college, they're able to get themselves a leg up and get credit for what they can do, get credit for what they know, and continue to go forward. So that is our why digital badges.
So given that we had this digital badge initiative, and Jeff's going to kind of talk about, he was our pilot for this program, and he kind of built all of the framework, we had to set parameters as an institution in order for our digital badges to hold water across the board. So some things that we had to set parameters for were everything needs to be tied to an industry need. We're not using these for a classroom management purpose. We're using these as giving students a competitive advantage once they go out into the workforce. We also urged our teachers to look beyond their task list. Most of our POS programs already get credit for what they do because the students are signed off on those competencies once they're in a program. But many of our students are finished with those very early on and are doing these enhanced tasks, these deeper projects, really refining their skills. So we asked our teachers to look beyond what's just on your task list and what are those things that the students aren't getting credit for that might help them get a job over another person once they go out there, or get placed into a college program that they might not be able to do based upon just the POS task list. Another thing we had to stress, much like with the SLOs, they needed to have a vetted assessment and a vetted rubric. So almost all of our badges have some component of a written exam and some component of a performance assessment. So we needed to have those that held water so that industry would say, yes, if they can meet these parameters, then I can sign them off and issue this digital badge, and that means something. The moment that we have programs not using vetted assessments and not using performance rubrics and just saying, yeah, I think so, that's good, it waters down the entire program. So when you're thinking about this as a systematic structure, you really have to urge your teachers to use a vetted assessment, a vetted rubric, in order to be able to do that. And one way that we're doing that is actually working with the industries and saying, would you sign off on this? Or working with certain tools and programs to be able to use a vetted assessment and a rubric. And also the badges have to get the students a get at the end of it. So the students have to have some sort of buy-in into the program to want to go above and beyond what the normal task list is and really see what their get out of getting a digital badge is. And as such, we had some things that we couldn't do, so we don't issue trivial badges, because if we issue trivial badges, the entire system of badges does not hold the water that it does when everybody is doing this for the competitive advantage. We don't allow badges without a rubric, and we do not confuse credential badges with the classroom management dojo style, Schoology perhaps badges that you might issue as a classroom teacher for attendance or for turning things in on time on a regular basis. It's tied to that industry skill, that industry need, that industry credential.
So some of the benefits of badging, these are both for students and for teachers, are the ability to personalize learning. So once students have completed that checklist, or even beyond, students often are coming in, whether it's in an English classroom or a construction, carpentry classroom, they have an interest. They're there for a reason. And it's usually not vague, like I just love all things hammers. They usually have some reason they're there, something that's their draw, okay? They like this piece. So this gives them a chance. They still have to do that task list, but they can personalize learning and say, this is something I really want to know more about. I want to dive further into this topic, this thing. Some of the examples, like different leadership activities students can do, gives them ability to really personalize their learning and also get out of it what they want to get out of it. Employer recognition, again, that competitive advantage, anything we can do to convey to employers, to colleges, all the amazing things our students have done, because all they really end up seeing a lot of times, you have a vague letter of recommendation, which tends to be, they're great and all, but tend to be very generalized. You have a transcript which shows a grade and not much else. So this is a way to really start pinpointing those things that students good at. Differentiation, and I'm not going to say too much about that because he's going to talk more about that, but just you have students at a wide range of what they're capable of. Get them credit where they're at. Don't make them reach this high level. Get them credit where they're at, however that can be built in. And student motivation, we've all heard the term gamification. They like gamification. They like this idea of they've earned something. Some of that's going to come back to how, as a teacher, you're presenting that to your students. If you're like, here's a badge, it doesn't matter, they're going to take that. But if you're presenting these as credentials, as portfolio builders, and making them valuable, they will take that, and that gamification will work. Yes?
So to that point, do students know the big list of what badges are available and some are going to be eager and go after them, or do you notice that a student is working towards one of them and assign the badge or present the badge as an opportunity to individual students when that comes up?
I would say that's different for different programs. So some of our programs are running it as a personalized learning, choose your own path curriculum where they would have a list to choose from. I'm really interested in kind of this field, and I'm going to kind of narrow it down that way. Some of our programs are built, as Jeff will talk about, where it's actually structured, their curriculum is structured around digital badging, and he'll kind of explain why that is. And then some of our programs have and we'll talk about this a little later as well, kind of the working with an industry professional and saying, what are those skills that you're looking for? And is there a way that we could get our kids like a fast pass to an interview? Not a guaranteed job, but a fast pass to an interview based upon criteria you set. So in that regard, it might be a one-on-one specific student that might be working towards that badge and not even realize it just because of work ethic and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So we're going to kind of get into the process of how this came about, and Jeff is going to, Jeff was the guinea pig for this. He was a pilot program, and he kind of built this structure that we kind of created and helped us troubleshoot it. So he'll talk about the phases of implementing this system.
Great. I need to apologize, first of all. I don't get out and talk to adults too often, so you're not my target audience, so I can't rely on the Marvel Universe, Star Wars, SpongeBob, and Three Stooges to bring them back in. So bear with me. So they did come to me and ask to help pilot this program. They already had the steps as to how they knew how they wanted to do it, but they wanted to actually do it with one of the programs there. My question was, why me? And
In a good way.
in a good way, yeah. And they did explain that my program would have been a great pilot for the digital badges. So for the first one was evaluate the curriculum. So again, I teach indoor-outdoor maintenance. Basically, I teach custodial maintenance during the winter months. Spring and fall, we do light landscaping. So imagine trying to find a curriculum, a textbook, anything for custodial maintenance is impossible. So for 20 plus years, what I relied on was just in-house things. I looked at, my students and what they needed to learn. I utilized my OAC. Again, it's very hard to get people on an OAC for mine. It's a very transient position. There's a lot of turnover. People just they aren't interested. They don't want to be part of it. So this is just things that we, pasted together to come up with a curriculum. The other thing was, I don't have any certification. So when they talked about all these other ones, you have auto that has ACEs, you have the nursing, there's all different certifications within our school. I didn't have anything that I could present to my students and say, hey, this is something that you can take, you can use it when you go on an interview, for your resume, whatever. I just didn't have anything for that. So that's why they thought it would be a good fit with my curriculum. Next one. All right, so how I started it then was I looked at my equipment and I started researching, and one of our providers was Aztec, and luckily it's actually manufactured about 45 minutes away from our school. So I started there. I started reaching out, calling up, and they were kind of excited. They said, that would be great, let's talk about what we can do. So when we did go out and meet with them, we asked permission if we can use their name, if we could use their products, something that would give validity to these micro-credentials and to these badges. So from there, we sort of springboarded. Then we looked around for other areas. So we went with our chemical manufacturer, Buckeye. They brought in representatives. They said, great. And then I started learning about all these other certifications that I could get my students. So they said, hey, that's great. We offer this Buckeye Honors Program where you can give your students a certification, and it shows that they know how to clean in school districts, universities, and colleges. So fantastic. From there, on the posters from this Buckeye Honors, there was this little CMI ISSA. So I started reviewing that, and I said, wow, this is Cleaning Management Institute. So I went to a conference out in Las Vegas, and here was to get certified to give your students a certification. And as I'm talking to the person who is presenting, he said, where are you from? I said, oh, I'm Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley. Well, I'm from Reading. So maybe we should get together and we can really talk about this. So he has been instrumental in this. He's gone and, I've gone through all the certifications. He is dragged him onto my OAC. So we started building upon all these relationships with industry and with the technology that we have. So from there, we just started going down and looking at the equipment first and seeing what we can do to start building the curriculum then. And then from there, we just looked at all the different areas. So for Aztec, that was the biggest one. Our administration is great. Since I piloted this program, they said, we will help supply you with whatever you need. So to give validity to it, we did purchase all their equipment that we needed. So everything from just floor scrubbers, auto scrubbers, burnishers, propane stripping and burnishing machines, stuff that we can give them digital badges for, but along the way, the micro-credentials. So I'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about the differentiation. But just something that they have a blueprint for to see, where they need to start out. Is it an introductory? Is it an advanced level? Because one of the things with my students is I can have them from 15 to 21. Some students may need that extra time. Some students can really go through it. It all depends on, what their disabilities really are. One of the things I do to give validity to the curriculum is I have a Padcaster, so I do video portfolios. So instead of just having the typical, checklist, we'll record everybody. I put them into maybe teams of 2 or 3. Someone gets to be a director, someone gets to set up all the equipment, and then at the end of the day, we always go through and we'll review it as a class. And I always say it's constructive criticism. We're not here to, rip the poor guy apart. And they do a great job. So they look at and, of course they're always going to say, oh, he didn't do this right, he didn't do that right. But it's something that these guys can then reflect back on. I can point out what they did wrong, and then we can correct it in future videos. So my goal is I used to give out flash drives, but they, so with the digital badges, it's great because the digital badges can always go with them. They can upload them to their Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I want to do something with a YouTube or some kind of closed channel that they have access to these. So, in case they're at a job interview, they can say, hey, I know how to use this piece of equipment. Here's the evidence that I can do it. So it's a great tool to have these kids actually look at it and see what they can do. And a lot of times they're proud of it.
And that again helps with the validity of this entire program, that we have the evidence to back up why we're issuing that digital badge to a student.
From there then, that's why Kelly was savior here. So she helped break down these large parts that we did and start funneling them down into our actual unit plans, the task listing itself. So we have performance criteria all the way down to the lesson plans as to how we can implement this and how these students can actually gain their micro-credentials and their digital badges.
It's important to have those unit plans that back up, again, just another layer of validity. This is the content, this is the assessment, this is all the backing that we have on our end to issue that digital badge and what the students are going to work through.
And then when all was, brought up, what I was able to do was present this to an OAC, and it was pretty nice since I had made all these contacts. We are, required by state law to have 2 OAC meetings a year, usually in the fall and in the spring. They do validate our curriculum. They also will validate and help us to obtain equipment that we need for our lab, the job skills they're exactly looking for within our area. And again, with what I'm teaching here, there's such a turnover that they're always looking for students. So sometimes you can get buy-in with it, sometimes not so much. But they did look at it, they loved it, and they did validate it and say this would be a good thing for the students to actually gain through the micro-credentials and the digital badging.
Okay, so how does this look in a classroom? What are some of those different options? So we kind of talked about this before. Personalized learning is one of the greatest things. So you have students coming in your room all the time who are passionate about something, whatever that is, and giving them a chance to really take that and take it further. So in this particular example, there's students coming in who have seen this concrete countertops, or you've seen the really elaborate floor concrete stamping and things like that. Our masonry does not cover that. That's not in the task list. That's not one of those basic skills they need to have. So one of the things that they've chosen to do is our instructor actually reached out to get himself certified in order to do concrete countertops and all of this. And now he is now able to teach his students. So if you have students who've done the basics, they've finished that task list, or this is just something they're really passionate about. I finished what I was working on. Can I learn more about this? So imagine now how much more marketable that student is going out, and I'm beyond just what I can do in masonry, I can also do this. So now I've opened up job opportunities just in standard construction firms who are building houses, and the customers like, hey, I want this, or I want this out here. Landscaping companies, and so you've opened up opportunities for them. This can apply in your regular classrooms as well, in your traditional classrooms, because they're coming into you, they might have a passion for publication or journalism, and being able to create something that you can build, allow them to learn your curriculum, learn your content, but go beyond that and then get credit for it, which is really cool. Because you'd like to think your students are just going to go beyond that just because they have that intrinsic motivation. Realistically, they're very busy too. They have stuff, so they want to know what they're getting out of it. And we live in a very future-oriented society where we're talking about jobs when they're 6, and my boys are going, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Mommy, can I be a dinosaur DNA specialist? Sure. But they're thinking about that stuff earlier and earlier and earlier. Career and readiness standards are really pushing that down. So there's a chance for them to really harness what they're interested in, get validity for it, build on that, and put it on a resume, put it on a college application, put it on whatever they need to. Employer recognition, so this was one of the ones she alluded to earlier, but we have some of our instructors who are hoping to create, and they haven't quite gotten this through the OAC yet, but some version of like a fast pass for students. So think of that like super gold star now. So this is encompassing skills in the classroom, but also encompassing those personal ethics, that going above and beyond. So having those criteria broken down, that if an employer, and again, we have OACs, so this can be presented to community members, business owners right in our valley, right around us. But saying, here is this badge, the student has this badge, and that's basically a stamp of approval from this instructor saying, yes, this person has done this amazing thing, and now as an employer I'm going, okay, you get an interview. Doesn't mean you get a job, we can't do that, obviously, it's way beyond. But hey, we'll give you an interview and you have a shot at getting your foot in the door, because sometimes that's what it takes. Especially when you're talking about a 17-year-old who's trying to write a resume, because we all know how hard that is for us. So they're 17 and they're like, what's your future goal? Date for homecoming. I don't know. So this is kind of a way to get them in that door, because those resumes don't always look so good at the beginning. Industry responsive is huge. So one of our instructors, his plan to come up with these digital badges, we've had a lot of entry points coming into this system. What he did was he looked at things he thought was important. Skills beyond that task list, as she said, skills that were not covered in the task list, but he knew he was teaching. And he then went around to local industry, local businesses, and said, okay, here's my list. Let's sit down and have a discussion. What do you care about? I'm not going to sit here and push a badge for a student that when you get it, you're like, yeah, I don't care if they can do that. That doesn't help me. Nobody asks for that. So this was his way of making sure when he takes the time to build out the badges, to do the unit plan, to do the rubrics, to do the assessments, when he pushes these to his students, when his students take the time to go through and do that, that when it gets out there, it matters. It's not just, yeah, good job. It really matters to them. So he was able to take this lengthy list and really whittle it down to what was truly important to the employers, which is really, really useful. And if you're in more of a traditional classroom, maybe you're an English teacher, maybe you're a math teacher, you can do the similar types of things with your local colleges and say, if my students, if I'm teaching maybe an honors English class, you're getting my students, what are things you want to see? What are things you want? I want to see that they've published somewhere, maybe. I want to see that they've worked on something. Maybe you have some kind of social media chat, backfeed, something like that. Technology, for example, they've worked on the audio and visual effects for their high school play, and they had to have accomplished all of these tasks. So now I'm going for an emerging media type of degree, but I can already do all this stuff. So those are the things, even in a traditional classroom, you can kind of think beyond.
All right, differentiation. This works perfectly for me. So if you saw in the first slide how many students we have, it was approximately, 2,500 students. We have about 1,200 students that have IEPs. Within mine, again, I'm a self-contained special needs career and technical classroom, but we do not have like a traditional a high school that has an autistic classroom or a reading specialist classroom. Or a deaf and hard of hearing classroom. We get all of them together, which can be a little challenging at times. So we have students that are on all different levels. With the micro-credential and badging, even if our students can't get to that digital badge level, they can still get the micro-credentials. So they can still collect and get some of the tasks that we have with the micro-credentialing, so that they have something to take with them. Again, I can have them for 6 years. Some students need that time. Again, other students can fly through it where they can actually move on to a different career area if they choose to. So, and it could be set up in any classroom the same way. That doesn't mean that there's no special IEP students in any of the other specialty labs. So within a foods lab, baking lab, carpentry lab, you can set these goals with the micro-credential and digital badges where these guys are on their way to at least collecting those. And again, instead of having we used to have something called a PAL booklet, a performance assessment log, that we used to give our students at the end. It was just a nicely color printed thing that many times when the students would leave and they were done with school, they'd still be sitting on the desk. Sometimes years later they go, "Hey, Mr. Dahl, do you have anything to show what I did?" And this is just a great way that these students, it can take it along with them in their digital lockers that they always have access to, so they can see the goals that they've obtained.
So the idea of can this work beyond the CTE classroom is yes, absolutely. And I'm hoping if you're from a traditional education, your mind's already kind of going about how this might apply to you. Stacy has kind of garnered some great ideas about what this might look like for a traditional school system.
These are just some ideas. So again, things that students can do that they can get credit for. So we have Google up there, and I know there's Google certifications out there, Google educator certifications. But a lot of times in a traditional classroom, they may not have gotten everything. They're not walking out as professional Microsoft users across the board, all encompassing. But maybe you've had a class that they have to meet certain requirements for word processing. They have to meet certain requirements for sheets and slides. So they're able to now take this and say, look at what I can do. Again, that competitive advantage. Even if I want to go to no more school and beyond high school, I'm done, had enough, I've graduated. To be able to walk out of there and walk into an office job and say, look at the skills I have. I am Excel, I'm able to use Excel, to this degree. Right there, I'm able to do something that sometimes there's a lot of other people that can't. So that gives them a leg up. You can collect all those, and maybe there's a Google Master Badge where they've gone through classes in your school and they've shown proficiency in sheets, in slides, in doc. They get that Master Badge, but what if they don't? They're really, really good at slides. They're really good at sheets, and I use those because so many schools have those. But you could do the same thing on the Microsoft side. Professionalism, again, you have to really figure out what that means to you. And I know a lot of schools do that portrait of a graduate now. I've seen a lot of that. So by taking that portrait of a graduate, you're actually breaking down too what it means. What are your values? When you have someone graduate, what does that look like in your school as successful? Those can be broken down into your rubric. This is what I need them to. So you could have teachers nominate students for this particular badge, and they're getting this going out the door. Cooperative education, this could be done in-house, but you can also have them, maybe there's a task or maybe there's an opportunity that allows them to work with another district, another school on an assignment. And how, were they able to do that successfully? Were they able to figure out how to communicate? Were they able to meet the parameters? The timelines, deadlines are huge. Career readiness standards open up a huge door for things that you can badge, that you can think of in terms of digital badge, because we really, there's no like career readiness class, and there's that portfolio that everybody's still trying to quite figure out what exactly has to go in there and how to make it less of, well, we're required to check the box, and make it more of a useful tool for a student. So this is another way to look at those and say, here's more things to build that portfolio. Adulting skills. I think it would be amazing to come out of high school being badged in something like maintaining a budget. How do you do that? I've seen different types of entrepreneurship classes out there where you're running businesses, or you're managing an office, or you're managing schedules. So it's not just a matter of did I meet my deadlines, but one of the great examples I had seen, they actually had recorded a mock Zoom session. So imagine how many times you've done a Zoom or a webinar or WebEx or something in your life, a Google Meet, and you come together and you're somebody on the other end's talking, the boss is talking, and they're okay, and I need you to do this, and you need you to do this, and at the end of that you hang up, you have to remember what all you're supposed to do, and you have to make sure it gets done, and like structuring that. Those are some really important skills. These aren't just for students though, professional development. Like teachers are students, they're tall students, sometimes short students. But they're tall students, they're the same. They sit through hours of professional development and walk out and they're like, and now what? And there is a school of thought that I don't necessarily agree with, but well, we don't want to give them too much, because if we give them these badges, then we're basically just building up their resume so they leave us. Your other alternative is they are poorly trained staff. So you really want them to be well trained. So being able to pull these in for professional development for the things that they've done, and I have like some examples down here that we have Schoology, so pulled off some random Schoology samples, but Perfect 10, you completed a 10-hour professional development course in Schoology. They get something to show for that. And now they have maybe upgraded to become one of your mentor teachers in Schoology. So now when somebody comes to me with a question, I could say, you know what, check with your Schoology mentor. They're really good at this, I know, because they did this, they took this PD course, and I've seen it in their classroom. So again, they have things they have to meet. Presentations too, we've talked about this both for students and for teachers. Like Jeff said, how many times do teachers get pulled out of the classroom and get a chance to present to people that aren't their students? And when they do, how amazing is that they've done that they've gotten out of their comfort zone, they've gotten out of their school, they're talking to people they don't know, they're able to showcase the amazing things that they're doing in their four walls. It is an amazing opportunity for them, both professionally, educationally, giving them something to show for that. Like, you went out here and you presented, and that is awesome. Same thing with students though. I've seen students, we have Skills USA, DECA, I'm missing, FCCLA. So these are things students participate in, extracurricular type of activities, student organizations, and they go out and speak to these large audiences. They're these high school students, 16-year-olds, speaking to rooms full of people they've never met. And how amazing is that? And think about the global economy we're in, and how amazing is that as an employer to hire someone who can do that. Even as a carpenter, one of the things a lot of our teachers build in are proposals, like pitching a proposal, like, I'm coming into this company, I want you to hire us to do your job. I have to be able to speak to you intelligently and answer your questions and think on the spot. And that is an amazing opportunity for badging for both students and teachers, getting outside their comfort zone and giving them, you went to speak to an audience that is beyond our four walls, and here's a badge for that.
And if you're a classroom teacher, I really encourage you to go out into local industry that might be connected in some way. If you're an English teacher, going out to the local newspaper, going out to the local news stations, someplace where they might be using the skills that you're teaching within your class. So when you're doing those personalized learning opportunities, you're helping your students make those connections. And it's something that we're already required to do with the career and readiness standards that have been put out by PBE. So when you're making these classroom connections outside of your classroom for these digital badges, again, you need to set those parameters in order for the program to have validity. So start with your portfolio building skills that the students will have a get when they get out of there. And looking beyond the standards. So what are you teaching now that your students aren't getting credit for, or that you're not getting credit for as a teacher? Because sometimes we might have, people saying, well, we shouldn't be teaching that because it's not in our content area. Well, I'm teaching them a life skill that it's going to go beyond here. So the more that we can look beyond our standards and provide a solid reason and validity and assessment as to why we're doing that, the more validity the whole program has. Using a vetted assessment and rubric, if validity and vetted were the words of the day, I mean, that would, those are the two words here that we want you to walk away from. Thinking about what the rubrics and assessments are that you will be using to provide the evidence to show that your students have earned these credentials. Creating badges that give students a competitive advantage. At the end of the day, the students need to get out of participating and going above and beyond. So what's their get? What's going to give them that competitive advantage when they go out into the career field or when they go to colleges? It's a lot different than saying, hey, I'm really good at math and science. I think I want to be an engineer. Would you please enroll me in your college program? To saying, hey, I'm really interested in engineering. I've done X, Y, and Z in my program. I've earned this digital badge, this digital badge. I have a portfolio to back me up. Please get me into your college. Who's going to get the place? And connecting with others in your department, across your school, or in your community. Workforce Development Board is a great place to go to connect with in your community. Also, going to your local CTEs. As you've heard, we already have, as a requirement for our programs, to have a bunch of industry professionals get together to validate our programs. So how can the CTEs help you, and how can you help the CTEs? We're both trying to just put out students to build our workforce, as we know. That's something that's, we're all kind of struggling to fill that void right now.
And I think in your classroom too, if you're an English teacher or a math teacher, thinking about badges that kind of bridge those four walls. Again, when you close your door, the students need to know that there's consistency. It helps with validity. So if you come up with a badge that goes across the entire English department has agreed, this is important. We've gone to a local college, they've said this is important. So as a group, we have come together and said, this is what this badge looks like, this is the standards, this is what we need to look for. That increases that validity, because now it's not, well, I got this badge from this teacher and this badge from this teacher, but an employer is getting used to seeing those consistent badges. The school is getting used to seeing those consistent badges, and the students aren't like, well, if I meet these requirements here, it's kind of like when you're going for a degree, like which classes overlap, can I pull these in? Well, maybe I checked this box here, but I checked two of their boxes, and well, now I checked another one. Keep them consistent. The more consistent you can be across a department, if you're lucky enough to have other people in your department, the more validity you have. Don't focus on trivial badges. So I love things like Class Dojo, I love things like charts and things like that. But if you get really, really hung up on those, you're going to start watering down everything else. So if this is a focus that you want to make in your school and your classroom, not saying don't reward your students, by all means, please do. But maybe call them not badges. Maybe they're something else. Maybe they're a sticker chart. Maybe they're a high five. I've seen some really cool examples of high fives. That it's still giving them validation for what they're doing, but it's in a different way. Assign a badge without standards. So these were two I found. I love responsibility. I think responsibility is important. I have no idea what that looks like. Does that mean they hung their book bag up? I don't know. That's a problem. You're awesome. I want this badge. Like someone to give me it. But the description, your students do awesome things, recognize it. I don't know what that means. And what I think is awesome is different than what you think is awesome. Your expectations are different than mine. We don't want to set this up like a PBIS type of system here. We want this to be able to give them something that goes beyond. Again, confusing credentials, it kind of goes back to the trivial badges thing. It's a gold star for either attitude or participation. I'm not sure. We get a gold star. So these again are in Schoology. We don't use Schoology at this point to assign our official digital badges. That's not where we put them. So we could add these into our Schoology system as long as we're keeping our others separate, because as soon as they start intermingling, we're going to start confusing everybody. And this is a big one. Don't assign a badge a student can't take with them. We want to build their portfolio. This is not ours to hold on to. So if we give them a badge in a closed system that they can't do a darn thing with, it has been a complete waste of everybody's time. So they have to get it. How they get it is up to whatever structure. You have different infrastructures, you have different programs in your school. NOCD Locker is one that CTEs have an opportunity to use. There's a program out right now, CTE 360, which is a career and tech specific program that allows digital badges with a front-facing portfolio students can give to employers and to post-secondary institutions. That's a possibility. You could have them save them in a fancy folder in Google Drive if you want. As long as you make sure before you delete their account, deactivate them upon like day 1 after graduation, they've gotten them out. Because as soon as that kid comes back, 48 hours after graduation, goes, hey, can I have that badge? You're like, it's gone. Imagine all that work that they put into, and now they've lost that. They need to be able to get that onto a resume, onto a portfolio, onto a website, whatever your system is, but make sure they can take it with them. Their successes should not stop at the diploma. Your job in increasing their successes should not stop when they walk across the stage. It needs to carry them into their future. That's why we're doing this.
So our next steps, Jeff was the pilot program for digital badges. That was the last 2 years it's taken you to build this program. This year, with the help of the Teacher in the Workplace grant, we actually have almost our entire construction wing working on reaching out to industries and figuring out what digital badges will fit within their program. So all the work that Jeff's done the last 2 years, we have roughly 12 teachers right now doing that work and figuring out the digital badge system that works for them. Because as we said, it's what works for Jeff is not going to work in our carpentry lab. It's not going to work in our electromechanical lab. So we really need to find what's the get that the students can get for each of our programs and figure out how do we provide the curriculum, assessment, rubric, and industry credential that goes along with that, that will carry that on. So there's a picture of our heavy equipment lab, and he is actually working to digital badge each piece of his equipment because he is a tech prep program, so he does not necessarily have the PDE, POS task list that goes with him. So he's working with his OAC to kind of build out what those requirements are, and he's doing things like taking his entire class out to Volvo, out to Shippensburg to work and build these industry credentials and industry connections for his students. So it's a fabulous opportunity, and he's also issuing a PennDOT Flagger digital badge certificate as well. So as I said, this is a continual program. We started it in 1. It's continuing to grow. We only see it as an add and a benefit for our students. So there's only more to come out of this program.
And I think from the next step standpoint too, from a technological perspective, some of the hardest part of this process is figuring out that structure, that framework from that end, from the skeleton. Where are we putting them that they can get them? So we've actually, that's one thing that we've actually evaluated this year. The original plan, I'm not sure, is going to continue to be the easiest way for a student to get it. So we're kind of evaluating that as well, because I think, again, super passionate about the fact that if they graduate and it disappears, it's been for naught. They need to take it with them. If they cannot, if their login dies when they graduate, it's been a waste of everybody's time. They got the skills, but if nobody knows they have them, it's not helping them or us. So really making sure that's structured out there. There are a lot of teachers with a lot of really good digital badges going on. It's just kind of getting us to the point. And a lot of the school, like Precision Machine, for example, they're industry heavy in certifications. So for them, they are already dealing with a lot more industry certifications that are PDE recognized. Obviously, we need to focus on them. So the focus at this point has been really nailing down some of those, the students that aren't leaving with as much as they really need to show how amazing they've done in the programs.
Yeah, and the importance of evaluating the system and making sure it's easy on not only the student end for carrying on, but also the teacher end for the actual issuing. So
which is why we've been reevaluating the system. It's teacher heavy.
Those are some of the growing pains that we've had within this program that are kind of coming to fruition. There's a great article, I wish I had brought it. It's called The 7 Deadly Sins of Digital Badging. I highly encourage you to look it up. If you don't remember that, just send us an email and we'll get that to you. But it really kind of puts the caveat of, what not to do for digital badging when you're thinking about how to roll out this program to your staff.
This will take you to our presentation. If you want to scan that, I didn't put the bit.ly up there. But if you want to scan that, if that's not working for some reason, I don't have the bit.ly up. I can do that quickly, or you can just feel free to reach out to us, and we will gladly get that to you. I usually do both. So.
On this handout, you have our contact information from last year. It's still the same, so feel free to reach out if there's anything that you want to talk about. If you want to kind of delve into this more and you need some feedback on it, we're here to kind of, support you through that process as well. So if you're curious to see what what we're doing, reach out, we'll see what we can do, but, like, we're all traditional education people that have made the switch to CTE and see the value. We feel like if we work more together and learn from each other, we'll only get farther, so. That's about it. I just got a question. It's okay.
You mentioned a lot about not confusing the digital badges that you're offering with things that might be used for classroom management, and that those can water down the importance and validity of things that are going to be invaluable to employers.
Right.
So is there any way that you can still use something like that for gamifying a classroom, or something as simple as classroom management, without watering down the other things? Or should you really just avoid using the more trivial recognition at all?
Our way of handling that is that it's housed in a different system, right? So the digital badge that they get in their Nocti locker is way different than a digital badge that they might get in their, Schoology classroom. But it's the importance of making sure the kid knows the difference at the end of the day. That what I give you, here does not necessarily mean the same, in the other system.
Okay.
So.
And if you've been doing digital badging, because I know I've gone to lots of gamification settings, and a lot of times digital badging is a lot more of that. And there's definitely value in that as well for motivating students on that everyday basis. There's definitely, one of my favorite Schoology digital badges is like, you were caught using your cell phone today. So what's funny about that one is you have to earn it off. So you get assigned it because they caught you with your cell phone. You have to get it off of your Schoology profile. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I think there's definitely a place. So if you've done that heavily in your classroom or in your institution, you can even just play with semantics and micro-credentialing. This is a badge. These are badges. This is a micro-credential, or this is a sticker, an LCTI certification or something. You don't want to, it's school, whatever your school is. This is your school's certification. So this is a list of certifications that our school is willing to give, so that you don't get rid of that. You can hang on to that. You don't want to change what you've already done. So if those have been called digital badges, now you suddenly switch gears, that's going to confuse the teachers will not be happy. The administration will be, nobody will know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, making sure that you, if you have to, if that's something that's been ingrained into your staff, just switch up those semantics and play with words.
We're kind of at the end of our time here, so if you have questions one-on-one, we're happy to talk with you. If not, enjoy the rest of your conference, especially if you're going to the dinner tonight. That'll be fun. Have fun. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Do you guys share, badges that you create with, other organizations?